Good afternoon, sports fans. Welcome to another episode of the Citizen Sports Weekly. I am Robert Harding, joined by Justin Ritzel. It is the summer of Shira, so our usual host is uh, doing something today on the shores of Owaska Lake. Maybe he's getting a tan finally after 85 years on Earth, who knows. But here we are talking sports, and let's get right into it. Aaron Rodgers held a press conference today, and boy, was it a doozy. Justin, what'd you think of what the reigning NFL MVP had to say? This was really the first time he's gotten a chance to talk about his side of this months-long story.
Did a 32-minute press conference, which even for the most respected NFL players, the most interesting NFL players, that is a long time to talk and stand up there and answer questions. This is what myself and many have been clamoring for since this dispute became public several months ago is what is the problem? What is your gripe with the organization? And we certainly got several answers. It was not one single thing, as I think a lot of people would have guessed. I think it begins with he did not want to be a lame duck quarterback this season. He did not want to go into 2021 with the impression that, especially coming off an MVP season where he was the best player in football, that the Packers are just going to use him up for this one more year and then move on and control where he plays next, which I think, is kind of the plan when they drafted Jordan Love is we'll stick with Aaron for 2 more years and then we'll send him off to whoever's going to give us the best package and, hey, thanks for your services. And that kind of goes into another one of his issues with the organization that he decided to fight back against is he is not happy with how the Green Bay Packers conduct their business in terms of letting respected, talented players get out of the building. He went all the way back to when the team let go of Charles Woodson. Mm-hmm. He referenced Jordy Nelson, Julius Peppers, Micah Hyde, who's now a Buffalo Bill. Yeah. He mentioned at least a dozen guys who he felt the team did either erred in not bringing them back, or even if they, couldn't come to an agreement on a salary, the lack of respect shown to those players on their way out the door that they didn't even get, and he didn't say this, I'm just, implying that they didn't get so much as a phone call. Thanks for your services. Thanks for all you did for the Green Bay Packers. We go to footballreference.com and we look up guys' stats and, this guy, he didn't even play well the next year, but that wasn't his point. His point is that there are intangibles that are not seen on a box score that these guys still could have brought to the table that are important to building a winning team. Mm-hmm. And that is not valued enough. And he did not want to suffer the same fate as all those guys did. And in his, to be in his corner, he's right. He is no doubt about it, future Hall of Famer. He's going to, the moment he takes a snap this year, he will become the longest tenured Packer in the franchise's history. That's 100+ years of Packers football, and no one has played more for the Packers than he will have. So that's really the kind of the key points. He made a lot of other comments in terms of kind of what his thought process was this summer. I think the most stunning part to me was there was a lot of rumors about is he going to retire? Mm-hmm. And I think people framed that as he's going to retire to facilitate a trade elsewhere. That was his avenue of getting to get out of Green Bay. I was a little stunned. Like, it sounded like he was a lot more close to retiring, like actually retiring. Like, yeah. I'm done with football. So he was asked, like, can you possibly, like, a week ago he was maybe considering, a couple weeks ago he was considering, like, hey, I might not play ever again. Can you flip that switch and go back to being the all-pro quarterback that you are when, you did a lot of training in the offseason, you stayed in shape, but mentally you weren't always 100% committed on playing this year. that was really the stunning thing to me that maybe people aren't going to talk about as much in the wake of all this, is that he was probably closer to actually retiring than most of us realized. And the thing is, if the Packers, if they can't get this resolved and he's not happier in a year and he doesn't commit to playing with the Packers again, they might not get some big trade package because he might actually retire after this season, Super Bowl or not. That is absolutely on the table in my mind after what he said today.
Yeah, yeah. No, I watched it as you did this afternoon, and it was quite something. I think it changed the narrative around this a bit, because what we've heard, that the tide kind of turned. I think initially there were people that were on Aaron Rodgers' side, but as this went on, I think more people started to shift. Like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is being a baby. That was kind of the sentiment that you heard from those types of folks. But I think today, him coming out and saying, and people know how honest Aaron Rodgers is. Like, he'll tell you how he's feeling. I think that brought the narrative back into, look, this is very much Aaron Rodgers not wanting anything, in my opinion, and in following sports as long as we have as fans, and certainly reporting on it. I don't think he was asking for anything that was out of the ordinary. The thought that a guy with his tenure at the Packers, just wanting to say, like, not the final decision, not even a decision, just, hey, can I have my opinion factored in here, because I see some things that you guys don't see. I don't think that's out of the out of the ordinary. Other quarterbacks. I know Peyton Manning's name gets tossed around, among others. Tom Brady, obviously, what he's been doing in Tampa Bay. These are examples of quarterbacks who have been able to have their viewpoint considered. Maybe they don't call the shots necessarily, but at least that they're allowed to share a viewpoint. It doesn't seem like that's well. We know from Aaron Rodgers that's not the SOP in Green Bay. But I agree with you. I think the big kind of the shocking part was just how serious retirement was for him, and as an option, like, not just I'm going to retire to force their hand. Maybe I don't want to play anymore. If this is the way it's going to be, I go out as the NFL MVP. I mean, let's face it, he doesn't have anything left to prove. Yeah, it'd be nice to win another Super Bowl or 5. I'm sure in his eyes, like, he would love to win, some more rings. But, he's already won one. He's, what, a 3-time NFL MVP. As you said, surefire, first ballot, future Hall of Famer. What's left for Aaron Rodgers to prove? And really the answer is nothing. But, he did say, I still have that fire in the belly, and I want to play, and they have a pretty good team too. Like, that's the thing about the Packers. They will contend again this year. I will refrain from picking them. Maybe they'll actually make the Super Bowl this year. Who knows? But I thought to kind of round this out here, I thought that the fact he finally came forward and told what his story was, because obviously there's different pieces here or there that have come out. I thought that was the most important thing of all, and I think when you look at it, what he's asking for isn't crazy. Like, it's not anything he's not asking for more money. The major thing that he's asking for is, hey, guys, I've been here for a while. I think I can offer something in terms of what the front office is doing. That's all I'm looking for. Will you give that to me? That's not his question to answer. Right? He made his feelings known, and really it's up to the front office. Is this something you're willing to do? Do you respect Aaron Rodgers enough to say, yeah, maybe we should go to this guy and see, what we should do, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Hopefully the relationship improves. Maybe we'll see Rodgers play in a Green Bay Packers uniform for, years to come, as he, finishes off his career. But it seems like there's still a lot of work to do here before we see that.
Now, as an aside, we had a conversation several videos ago after Naomi Osaka dropped out of, I think it was Wimbledon, and just the role that sports media plays and what role we have in interviewing players and telling their stories and all that. And today's press conference was an example of why that is so important, that media access is so important, because this was the first time when, and it was going to happen at some point, I imagine, even if he would have retired and not come back to Green Bay, but someone was going to stick a microphone in front of Aaron Rodgers and force him to answer questions. And he delivered today. We learned a lot of information that we didn't know before. That is the entire purpose of sports media. That's why people read stories, because Aaron Rodgers provided a glimpse into his mind today. And we can all be, especially Packers fans like myself, can be thankful for that. He had one quote when he was talking about the fact that he feels he is an asset to an organization, because with him in the building, the Packers are a contender every single year. Yeah. And his quote was, "People don't come to Green Bay for vacation. They come because I'm here and they have a chance to win championships." Yeah. That is a rock star quote, yeah. And he's right. And so that not only articulates kind of what he's thinking and kind of one of the bases of his issues, but also that's why we do this. This is why media is important, especially in sports, is to get athletes to candidly share what's on their mind, because obviously people care about the sports industry. Yeah. People care about what the LeBron Jameses, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, etc., what they have to say, whether it be about their sport or about something else.
Right. So let's stay with the NFL. Obviously training camps are starting up this week. A few teams started a little bit early, among them the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers, but the rest of the NFL getting going this week. Justin, for you, what is the biggest storyline as teams get going here and they start preparing for the 2021 season?
Well, I think without a doubt the biggest thing is all these questions about vaccination rates and which teams have met the threshold where they can return to normalcy. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of reporting done on whether a player wants to falsely use HIPAA as an excuse not to share their vaccination information. But there's going to be a lot of reporting on, hey, it looks like this guy did get his shots, or it looks like this guy didn't. Like, oh, so-and-so, he's walking around the facility with his mask still on. What does that mean? And it's going to be really interesting as we get deeper into training camp, as we've talked about before, what teams decide to do with players who haven't gotten their shots and are inconveniencing the team, like your boy Cole Beasley. If you want to talk about an individual player who I'm going to be watching with intent curiosity this training camp, it's going to be him. I'll be really curious how much longer his Bills tenure will last if he doesn't change his mind. What are you looking forward to this training camp?
Yeah, I think after the draft, this quarterback class coming in, I'm kind of interested in how that's going to play out. I do agree with you. I think that this looming question of vaccinations is a big deal. I think for fans, they may not, the average fan may not be familiar with this, but there are relaxed protocols for teams that have a high vaccination rate. I think it's 85%, and it's similar to other leagues too. MLB did it 85% as well. And once you hit that threshold, for those players that are part of that, it's a lot easier. Life is back to normal. You're back doing, your meetings the way that you did, and you don't have to worry about masks and other things. There are some, still some safety, precautions that you have to take, because the vaccine isn't 100%. No vaccine is, but it's definitely more restrictive for those that don't get vaccinated. But from a football standpoint, I'm curious as to how this is going to play out with the rookie class of quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, I think it's without a doubt he's going to be the Jaguar starter. We'll see how the situation unfolds in San Francisco. I know that I think Shanahan came out and said Jimmy G is going to be the guy, but as we know, training camp is training camp, and the preseason is the preseason. If Trey Lance did sign his deal, so we'll see if he gets in there and maybe wins the starting job. And then the situation in New England, Mac Jones is apparently winning over his receivers early on, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's going to be interesting because that's going to affect the trajectories of those teams. The Jaguars, obviously I think they had 1-15 season last year. They stunk. So this year it's like, okay, do we have some pieces to maybe win 5-6 games, and start building back to being, playing, at least being a contender in that tough AFC South. For the Niners and the Patriots, it's more, can we get back to being Super Bowl contenders again? And that's all going to ride on the quarterback. So I think those storylines are going to be interesting to follow as camp progresses.
I'm really curious. One of the teams that I guess has been hyped up, not that they haven't been of interest over the last several years, but the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about teams that took a swing at the most important position, it was them. Are they going to take a huge step forward this year with Matt Stafford? I've always been a bit of a skeptic when it comes to Matthew Stafford. I think that he's received a lot more support in Detroit than people are willing to admit. I think they have had years when they had good defenses there, specifically earlier in his tenure, the kind of early 2010s. And I think he's had plenty of receiving help. I mean, Calvin Johnson's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Golden Tate is a solid NFL receiver. Yeah. Marvin Jones, these are good players. Maybe he didn't have the best offensive line at times in Detroit, but I've seen a lot of other great quarterbacks that won in spite of that. Rodgers, Russell Wilson, those are just to name a few. So I'm really curious. I think the Rams are one of the more fascinating teams this year. They're kind of like the anti-Packers. They always go for it. Yeah. They don't care about draft picks. They consider the year that is about to take place as the most important year and the year that they want to go win a Super Bowl. They certainly took that to a new extreme this offseason by acquiring Stafford. I'll be really curious to watch them not only this training camp, but throughout the year. They're going to be a fun team in a very tough division.
All right, let's move to the college ranks because there's been quite a news story that has been brewing over the last week. This happened, I think it started up shortly after we did the video last week, but Texas and Oklahoma, when you think of the Big 12, you think of those two schools, I think. They announced that they are going to be headed to the SEC, arguably the biggest conference, the most powerful conference, I would say, at least in college football, but certainly they have a stacked conference for a lot of other sports as well, college basketball, of course, too. Looking at this, are we looking at another, this happened with the Big East some years ago. Syracuse, among others, left for the ACC. Some other conferences, the Big East ceased to exist. Are we seeing another big shift in college sports with these conferences? You're going to end up with the SEC being this mega conference now, and the Big 12 potentially could be the latest casualty of all this.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. You mentioned Syracuse, and I'm like, well, not so much in football, but obviously in basketball. The Big East was one of the best conferences going, but when Syracuse had an opportunity to flip to the ACC because of football, they wanted to have those football ties. They did it, and guess what? How many Big East teams can you name? I can't name any. I really do not know a single team that is currently in the Big East. You could tell me the Big East isn't even a conference. Maybe you're about to tell me that. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's no longer a conference.
It would not shock me, but that just goes to show, like, you kind of lose those blue bloods of your conference, and it just dissolves everything. So I'm not surprised, necessarily. Not that, again, I've said this on almost every time we talk about college sports. I am not the biggest college football fan. Really, I pay attention to Syracuse out of an obligation to my job here because there's interest in it a little bit here in Auburn. But you can't feel good about this if you're another member of the Big 12, seeing two blue blood teams looking to go elsewhere. And obviously, if you're the SEC, you're like, yeah, hey, come aboard. We'll the more the merrier. This will create more interesting matchups. We'll get probably more teams into the expanded playoff whenever that happens. Sounds like a great deal for us. Come aboard.
Yeah, I think, when you look at the landscape and what potentially could happen, you're talking about Oklahoma, one of the college football powers, a team that, comes out of the Big 12 and, represents the Big 12 in the college football playoff, going into the same conference as Alabama, and so that can make for some juicy matchups in the years to come. I don't think this would happen until 2025, so we have some time because they're committed to the Big 12. There's TV rights involved, this kind of thing. So I don't think it can happen until then. But it's going to be interesting to see. Okay, if you're a West Virginia, which is in the Big 12, they were in the Big East, moved to the Big 12. Texas Tech, the Kansas teams, Kansas and Kansas State, Oklahoma State. Where do you guys go? Do you hope to try and salvage the Big 12? Do you maybe split off, go to another conference? That for me is going to be the most interesting part of this because, Oklahoma and Tennessee, we know where they're going. But what are the rest of the teams going to do? And I think that's why the Big 12 is kind of in scramble mode right now because it's like, oh, all right, we lost two of our big guns. We have to, if we want to remain a conference, we have to keep these teams in line. And that might be tough to do because, the ACC might see what the SEC does and say, West Virginia, come over here. The water's warm, West Virginia is always kind of an odd mix in that because you look at where they are compared to where the Big 12 schools are. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe they shift over there. We'll see. But it's definitely another one of these big shifts in the makeup of college sports. Again, going back to what happened with Syracuse and the Big East and those teams, that's why you don't see the Syracuse-Georgetown rivalry in conference anymore, is because of the breakup of that conference. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, especially with the remaining Big 12 teams. But yeah, I think we're going to be seeing some larger conferences in a few years. So let's move on to the last topic. Another one of these news stories that came out shortly after the video last week, but the Cleveland Indians in the American League, they announced that they are going to change their name, a little bit more decisive, to say the least, than the Washington football team, who keeps dragging out its process. Cleveland Indians come out, they're going to be renamed the Guardians. And for some history here, there are the Guardians of Travel, I believe. I might have the name wrong, but they are in Cleveland, and so that's the root of this name. So if, for all these doofuses out there that are, oh, this is a dumb name, there's some history in this for Cleveland. That's why they went with the Guardians. Now, I know that there's some takes about the logo, which is part of the reason I brought up this topic. But Justin, what do you think of the name change and how they rolled this out?
I hate it. I hate everything about it. Listen, so the Indians did not just come out with a name change, last week out of the blue. They said several months ago that there was going to be a name change, and to their credit, unlike Washington, the Washington formerly known as the Redskins, they didn't take their sweet time. Hey, we don't even know if Washington's ever going to have a real team name. People have kind of grown on the WFT.
Yeah.
Not me. I think you'd like to have a mascot, but I guess for me, my problems are twofold. I 100% support getting rid of racist team names, racist logos, like the former Washington logo and team name. I 100% am behind that. I do not consider Indians to be in that tier. I think in terms of the team name, I think Chief Wahoo, getting rid of that, I understand that. I support that. That's not a good look. But I would have supported just sticking with the Cleveland Indians name. Now, okay, if you're going to change it, I don't like this nickname. I think that Guardians has too many syllables. I think of team names, they should have 2 syllables. Packers, Cowboys, list could go on and on. It's just it's a mouthful when I'm trying to talk sports. Oh, the Guardians, the Cleveland, it's just a lot. I would have liked Cleveland Spiders. That's a former team name of the organization, or it's a former baseball team there. Just seems like that would have been a nice, easy transition. Hey, we already have a history with this name. Let's bring it back. It's not that Guardians isn't, but Spiders. You don't see too many professional teams named Spiders. The worst part of it, 100%, is the EA Sports Make a Team logo that they decided to use. It literally looks like I could have designed that with clip art on my Dell work laptop. It's terrible. If you're gonna do Guardians or whatever, you gotta do something better than that. It's just it's a G with 2 dumb looking red, like the Red Wings logo, but way less cool. Looks like a high school student designed it. So I got issues with the whole process, the whole rollout. I don't like it, and they're gonna have to do quite a bit of convincing to change my mind.
Yeah, I will say that the art that I saw with this probably not the best. I think they definitely could have come up with something maybe a little more flashier. I don't know if you're going to change a team name, especially in the 21st century. I think it has to have a 21st century look. This has the makings of like a 20th century minor league team. Like something like I mean I've seen like the Rochester Plates and everything that these minor league teams do, that they're a lot more creative and eye-catching than what Cleveland rolled out. I don't mind the name so much. I think if you're going to name your team something like this is why it's so perplexing that it's taking Washington so long. Like, capture the essence of your region's history, and at least they did that. I do think getting away from the Native American names is a good idea. I do agree that Indians certainly not as not offensive. You can look at all these other team names and logos and certainly point to where it's offensive. And Chief Wahoo, yes, definitely an offensive logo. But I think Cleveland committed to look. We don't want to come across as using Native Americans, for our commercial gain, and so that made a lot of sense to pursue the name change. So, I think they went about the name change the right way, and kind of rip the Band-Aid off. Like, look, we're gonna do this. Could have spent a little more time on the logos, I think, but I credit them for saying, look, this is what the name's going to be. This is what we're going to be known as going forward, and that's that. It won't change the fact that they're not going to win a damn World Series for the next 100 years. But hey, credit to them for doing what the Washington football team hasn't done. I don't know what's going on down there. Dan Snyder runs one hell of an organization because this guy can't figure it out. But they seem lost in this process. Cleveland, on the other hand, comes out and says, "Here it is," and it didn't take them that long to do it. Kudos to them for doing it this way, because I think this way, you get the outrage artists out of the way. There's some people that really made this a political thing. They're on to other issues now. Simone Biles has distracted them, but I think what you're going to see is a lot of people kind of embrace the name, especially the locals, because they're going to say, look, this kind of plays to our history a little bit. It's fine. We'll move on.
I think Dan Snyder is deliberately just continuing to push off a final decision, because I think it's a middle finger to the NFL or the people who push for that name change. Yeah. They have plenty of suitable options they easily could have went to, well before right now. They could have jumped on a name right away. They could have taken a month or two, and you know what? Financially, I think it would have benefited them. I think you throw out a new logo and new mascot and all that, and people that obviously not everyone has or will support the decision, but there will be a lot of people who do. and they'll support the Washington football team regardless of what their nickname is, and they want to go out and buy a new hoodie or a new T-shirt or a new jersey. You could not that it needed dramatic changes. I like their uniforms, but you could have altered it a little bit and make more money. And in a way, the name needed to go, like I said, but in a way, I kind of respect Dan Snyder for once for kind of sticking it to the man. But make a choice here. Like, your football team is kind of, with this whole process, kind of a laughing stock. Just make a call and let's get on with our lives.
Well, we'll wrap it up there. Next week, we'll be in the month of August, folks. Lot more sports to talk about. Justin will be on the high school beat coming up here. Practices starting in a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks.
Couple weeks.
And then, of course, the NFL season's right around the corner. So August promises to be a fun one. So, and Chris will be back, I'm sure. I think he was just off this week. He'll be back in action next week. So
you never really know with Shearer.
Yeah, he's.
You ever listen to the Aerosmith album Permanent Vacation?
Oh, that was a good one. So on that note, we'll wrap up this video. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Citizen Sports Week.